I'm Matt with State of Flex here with a review for the episode of Star Trek the Original Series Where No Man Has Gone Before. This is my favorite individual episode of Star Trek among the entire franchise. This was designed as the second pilot. A little bit of backstory, Gene Roddenberry had written and produced a pilot for, I believe it was NBC, for Star Trek, which was called The Cage, which starred Jeffrey Hunter as the character of Christopher Pike, a very sure of himself captain that has sort of lost himself amongst the stars, and he seemed to be very hard on himself kind of character. And the studio thought the show was a little too intellectual, and they they also felt his character to be a little lacking in the fun department. I think they wanted more swashbuckler. So they ordered a second pilot. The second pilot was Where No Man Has Gone Before. And out went Jeffrey Hunter, and in came William Shatner. I discussed his impish, rapscallion kind of quality, his Peter Pan-ness in the previous episode, my whole season 1 breakdown. But it's this character confronted with the bare concept of what happens when you're engaging in a Star Trek and one of your crew is being gifted with power, absolute power. And it's a sort of subtle dig at Christianity or any theism, I guess. It's not necessarily specific to Christianity, but to theism, where you have this regular person who loses all sense of human self once he has been gifted these powers. And it happens to a crewman who has a long history with Kirk, sadly is never referenced again, who is gifted these powers and is immediately abusive to them. And it culminates with this epic showdown between human man Kirk and this godlike entity, absolute power corrupting absolutely. And this god tries to put Kirk in his grave, and the show is still shifting and adjusting. He was not the James Tiberius Kirk that we know. His gravestone that he is threatened with reads James R. Kirk, which one could only imagine stands for Riberius. And he confronts this godlike power. And another crewman, also a crewwoman, has that power too, and the two kind of go head to head, and Kirk is the one that has to use his ingenuity to take him down. And what I find interesting is that even though there's a little more gunplay in this second pilot, it doesn't let up on the philosophical underpinnings throughout the episode, and if anything, I find this one more intellectually stimulating than The Cage. I think The Cage is a very, very good episode of the show, so good that they reworked it into a 2-part special called The Menagerie before releasing the whole original Cage. But Where No Man Has Gone Before, it utilizes action, has more fun with the Kirk character, but in no way sacrifices its own intellectual desires to tell that story. It was just not unlike getting a second draft. And the show that evolved from Where No Man Has Gone Before is the show that I fell in love with. I don't know if the show that The Cage was going to be would have worked quite as well. I think it would have lacked that important element of humor that the series later became known for. And well, almost every episode culminates with like a little comedic sting, usually involving Spock in some way, or Spock and Bones conflicting. That doesn't seem like it would have come out of what The Cage had to offer. Yet The Cage, I do think, works as an individual episode of a hypothetical show, and I think would have worked as an episode of, say, Twilight Zone or Outer Limits or some variant of that. Feels very much like an EC comic, weird science kind of story. Whereas Where No Man Has Gone Before feels like the bedrock of a brilliant TV show that is going to move through the cosmos. And that's quite honestly what it does. This has just a great performance from Shatner. I think Shatner is at his some of his best in this episode. And he really fights for and believes in his character. You can tell, at least at this point. And Spock, even though he's not quite there, and there's still some aspects of his character, like he references that he has human blood in his ancestry. He fails to neglect that was his mother. The show was growing and evolving through time, but so it's not perfect, and the Spock in this episode still isn't quite the Spock that we would get even like a few short episodes later, with like The Naked Time. Or certainly Amok Time. It's got a lot of time-involved stories. But it's far and away the better presentation between Spock in this and Spock, who's the only carryover character from The Cage. Spock in The Cage just seemed like any other crewman. He just had pointy ears. And I guess maybe that was partial intent, but I like the idea of the stone-cold logical person who's fighting with his own inner humanity, because feels superior to it, and that's his inferior side, conflicting with Bones, who's unfortunately not in this episode, who is trying to who comes off quite racist in a lot of episodes, or speciest, I guess. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Where No Man Has Gone Before provided the bedrock for which all great Star Trek came afterwards. It's one of the, there are 2 episodes of any Star Trek media that I think are absolute perfect. And if I were to have a list of my 5 favorite episodes of all Star Trek, this, no matter what, still lands at that number 1 spot. Next Generation has an episode that would be on that list. Deep Space Nine has an episode that would be on that list. The other 2 episodes actually do come from the original series. Weirdly enough, one's in season 2 and one's in season 3. So for each season that I review, I will bookend it with a review of an individual episode. But there you have it. If you've never seen Star Trek, or you've never seen this episode of Star Trek, or you don't know where to start here. It's the perfect place. Where No Man Has Gone Before. Let me know what your favorite episode of the original series is down below. Thanks for watching. Bye.